It's Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company?
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Kind of surreal, admittedly. And today feels like this new birth, like, I don't know, this rejuvenated energy. I think it's because the sun's out. It's funny how relative it is because it's 34 degrees and you're like, oh, where are the flip-flops?
But it feels like 40.
It does that. It's the feels like temperature that we go with, Eddie.
That's right.
But coming off of, I have always said that I love the Super Bowl, the NFL season, everything else, but I associate so many things weather related. And coming off of the Super Bowl, oftentimes you say to yourself, oh man, like the NFL season's over with. As a kid in particular growing up, it was almost like the day after the Indy 500 of like, oh, this long wait, right? And I think for Colts fans, they're officially done. But nonetheless, as the year has turned on the NFL season, it felt to me like today there's almost more discussion about the Super Bowl than there was leading into it or even during the game itself. Because, yes, there are plenty of things locally to talk about, which we will get to and discuss. And now we kind of turn our attention towards that. The Pacers and figuring out what exactly the rest of the year looks like for them. I think we have a pretty good idea on that. Purdue and what in the world is going on with Purdue. And you know that you're a great team or you are expected to be a great team when you get a home win in the conference over a team within the last decade that's been to a Final Four, and you look at it and you say, but that team is now terrible, and this should have been a blowout. And in Indiana's case, you again, and this is for Indiana, and in no way, shape, or form do I believe that this means that Indiana University basketball is going to go on a run like the Pacers had last spring and summer. But they do find ways to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, or in the case of the UCLA game, nearly the opposite, and then they found a way to win. But they find ways to finish games when it's least expected. And to the naked eye, it looked like there were some questionable calls against Wisconsin. But if you really look at the videotape, I think probably the right calls. But Indiana with a big win over the weekend as well. There's plenty to get to today. Good afternoon to you. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice you hear on this program.
Good day.
We call it Query and Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Eddie, I will begin with you, your overall experience of the Super Bowl. You did enjoy, didn't enjoy, had fun, didn't have fun, etc.
There you go.
I think a lot of people felt that way, and that's what happens when...
Here's the thing I would add. If I was not, and I told one of our coworkers this before the show, if I was not at a friend's house surrounded by a couple other people and we were having a good time, there were like 8 of us in total, I probably, if I was at home with Olivia, with Joey and Yogi, our dogs, and our cat that we just called Child, if we were just at the house by ourselves, I probably would have turned that game off just because it wasn't very entertaining. It never felt like New England was in the game.
Correct. It was never in doubt, right?
Yeah.
That's correct. But a part of that, and this goes with any sport. With any sport, a purist of the game, no matter what sport you're talking about, can appreciate a great defensive game or a great defensive effort. You know, the record in the Super Bowl for the only quarterback. It's a great trivia question. A great trivia question. It's funny, Eddie, because who is undeniably Joe Montana? I'll take him out of the equation. If you're going with sheer numbers of rings, who is the most accomplished quarterback in Super Bowl history?
Tom Brady.
Correct. And what's funny is the least accomplished quarterback in Super Bowl history is of the same franchise. The worst Super Bowl performance by a starting quarterback is a New England Patriot. And it's not Drake May. But it's Tony Eason who has the record for the record for only quarterback to start a Super Bowl and not complete a pass. I believe he was 0 of 11 before he was knocked out of Super Bowl 20 against the Chicago Bears.
0 of 11? Because 0 is not a number?
Okay. Ofer is a common term, by the way. But I appreciate your Mark Boyle influence.
You're welcome.
0 for 11. And I think that's right. And then he was knocked out of the game. That was not necessarily on that level performance last night for Drake May, who you felt bad for, and it was late in the fourth. Chris Collinsworth pointed out he started to kind of figure it out, and things started to slow down a little bit. But that is a nasty front four for the Seattle Seahawks. And when I watched when I soaked it all in, and I looked at the formula for Seattle, elite, and I mean they were in the backfield all day. Elite pass rush, aggressive defense with a fast closing safety, dynamic stretch wide receiver that didn't necessarily at any point get uncorked yesterday, but keeps a defense honest.
You have to wonder how much of that foot injury was bothering him during that game.
Yeah, and he was hobbled later in the game, too. He got re-hobbled, if you will, right?
Yeah, had to go to the medical tent to get checked out for a concussion.
We're talking about Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? Obviously, Cooper Kupp, then you have the crafty veteran that can get himself open. And Kenneth Walker in the way, and they usually have kind of a two-headed monster in the running game, but what I thought was interesting, and others can disagree with me on this, I never felt like they were using Walker to open up their pass game. Even though their pass game never got going with Darnold, they continued to go to it to open up Walker. They didn't hyper-focus their offense around Walker. They used him as complementary, and he was very complimentary. He was very, very effective and very good, obviously, as the most valuable player. The reason I say all of that is because I do think there's a blueprint if you wanted to be optimistic on this sunny day in Indianapolis. This is a day in Indianapolis where you look at it and you're like, okay, we're not even halfway through February. We could have another polar vortex on the way. The snow that we had that was pretty at one point is now the like gray, crusty, exhaust-infused snow. Ugh.
This is a big week for the bet, Jake. A big, big week.
It is. It is. Our bet on the melt. The great melt. But again, keep in mind, Eddie, I said when there is no remnant at all.
I know. Today is supposed to get near 40.
It's going to be close. It's going to be close.
46 tomorrow, sunshine until Friday. Low 40s, high 30s
we'll
this
have a
week.
really good idea on Friday where we stand in terms of how much of the snow mountains have been done. I said the 17th. Is that right?
Yes.
You took the under.
I took the over.
You took
I
the
took the under.
You
Sorry,
took the under, yeah.
Sorry, yes.
But either way, in Indianapolis, you go out and you say to yourself, there's not a whole lot about the middle of February with the gray snow and the sports calendar slowing down and typically gray days. There's not a lot usually to make you optimistic. But last night, and how funny it would be that it's the city of Seattle in February that's providing the essence of sun here and the optimism. But I really do think if you look at it, and as much as we have critiqued Chris Ballard, rightly so, and as much as we've said that the Colts are too timid a franchise and that they are reactive instead of proactive, all true, there is an element of truth to the fact that Seattle does offer a little bit of a blueprint. If this is a copycat league, and if this is a league where teams that are successful, oftentimes then you see the – are we okay in here, Eddie? Do we know? They're doing some work in the building. Do we know if we're going to be okay? Is there a guy drilling through the wall? Can you hear that?
I certainly can't. I don't know if it's picking it up on the mics.
For what it's worth.
I picked up some gnat sound from the circle when they were working on the steps.
Yes.
You know?
That's a little of what we're dealing with in here, right? Either way, sorry, I keep getting my train of thought keeps getting interrupted and going off the rails. I think Seattle, if this is a copycat league and everybody looks at the way that the Seahawks play and say that's the formula for winning, then I think that's good news for the Colts because they may have the foundation of it. Now, because they have a running back that can be dynamic. I think at times maybe they're too reliant on said running back, and they need to see the way Seattle does it in terms of complementary versus main line. They have a wide receiver, free agent, got to bring him back, that can be a sneaky, find himself open, and deep ball threat that catches everything in Alec Pierce, and he really has shown that the last year or two. They have a cagey veteran that over the middle can get himself open. And just when you're worried about Alec Pierce and you've got your eyes on him, I'm not saying Alec Pierce is Jackson Smith and Jigma, but they're similar in terms of their style of play. And Michael Pittman can be like a Cooper Kupp. And Sam Darnold, you've got to be happy for Sam Darnold. Honestly, you got to be happy for Sam Darnold. And if there's one thing you can say for the Colts here that I'm optimistic about, if there's one thing you can say about the Colts, it's this. For the beginning of time, every franchise, you hope when you have a high draft pick and you know that you're looking for a quarterback, you hope that you get a quarterback that is going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback, right? That is always the thought and expectation. And the Colts have done that. They drafted one in John Elway. Granted, he, of course, ended up winning it with the Broncos. They did it with Peyton Manning. He won it here, and then he won in Denver. The Broncos have never won a Super Bowl without a quarterback starting for them that was drafted by the Colts, by the way. You thought they were going to do it with Andrew Luck. Seemed a foregone conclusion, correct? But if you look at the 2018 NFL Draft, this is the one thing you've got to be excited about. The Super Bowl winning quarterback was drafted in the spot in a pick that was owned by the Indianapolis Colts. Congratulations. Hang a banner. The Colts could hang two banners. Number one, almost beat Seattle with Phillip Rivers. Number two, originally owned the draft pick that Sam Darnold was taken. They traded it, of course, in the Quentin Nelson trade. But that's kind of cool. But either way, kidding aside, you've got Daniel Jones at the quarterback position. And can he be a Darnold? Yeah. Darnold there's nothing about Sam Darnold that overly jumps out at you, but he is a solid and stable quarterback that it took a long time, but he found his footing. And if you build the right pieces around him, then you can win a Super Bowl. And that's what you saw yesterday. And that was a blueprint. Seattle at what point in the year, Eddie, would you say that you finally were convinced that Seattle, like, you know what, this could be a Super Bowl winning team?
That's a great question. Because I don't know how to really answer that. Probably the end of the regular season after they mopped the floor with San Francisco.
Yeah, probably that late, right? I mean, they finished strong, right? In the fact that they San Francisco and then beating the Rams as well, right? That's where you're like, okay, these guys, once they clinched the number one seed, you're like, man, they actually could do this. But so much of it was, I think that we hyper-focus on the quarterback position in the NFL. And look at the last two that have won it. Good quarterbacks, but they're not Josh Allen. They're not Patrick Mahomes. They're solid system quarterbacks. And if your system is really good and you have the right number of weapons around, then you can make some noise. That's the phrase of the day, Eddie. Make some noise, right?
That's right, Jake. That is right.
Now, let me tell you one other thing that I noticed yesterday that was of interest to me. And it's the elephant in the room when you're talking about the Super Bowl. It is. And it exhausts me as much as anybody. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a mea culpa here. And before people think that I'm going into a territory that you don't want to hear about, hear me out, because I don't think that's the way I'm going to go with it. But years ago, and I don't know exactly when it was or what it was, but when I was doing sports talk radio, when politics would come into play, I would often opine. Actually, on both sides. I'm about as middle as it gets, truth be told. But no one cares about that or my fantasy team. And so I would talk about it because I felt like it was my obligation, my duty. And there are certain things where when you have the microphone or the platform that we do, there is an obligation to it. To voice your opinion on certain things, perhaps. But at that time, people kept saying to me, Jake, people don't want politics in their sports. And I was slow to learn that because I thought, no, they just don't want the other opinion politics in their sports. People love politics in sports so long as it's their politics. And that was how I felt about it. So I would kind of push back and double down. And I've learned over the years that, in fact, I think that statement's true. And that when people come to this radio show, I want people, no matter what socioeconomic background they're from, no matter what creed they're from, no matter what religion they practice, no matter what it is, I want them to listen to this show and say, it's just a fun show. Just fun guys having fun. Yeah, they take things seriously from time to time. Huh?
Fun guys.
That's right.
We're mushrooms?
We are.
Okay.
You're the shiitake.
Do you
because
like
it can be
shrooms?
mispronounced correct. I do like mushrooms on a pizza, yes. Go to Chicago's Pizza, I like mushrooms on my pizza, yes.
Okay.
But what I'm getting at is this. I just want people to be able to know that it's, for the most part, a place where they're going to come and we're all just sitting around a sports bar, right? And so it is not my intent to bring up the elephant in the room of the halftime shows to bring politics into it. Some people looked at it and said, I'd rather listen to a musician where I can sing along to all the words. That's cool. You know, for years, people at halftime would flip over to the Puppy Bowl. And we didn't think that that made them bad people because they chose to watch puppies over Prince or puppies over the Rolling Stones. So why should we take any exception to whether people chose to watch A, B, C, or D? Who cares? We're all Americans. We all have different things that we enjoy. Now, as for the halftime show that was aligned to the Super Bowl inside the stadium, this is, to me, what's interesting. And it's a very subtle thing that I thought about last night. The NFL, as I have said a billion times, is and has always been the 800-pound gorilla. Always has been. And the NFL has basically been completely impervious to threat. There is no league that can touch it. There is no sport that, and a lot of this goes back to fantasy football. Fantasy football became huge for the NFL without the NFL really even trying to do so. But fantasy football became big to the NFL because in the early 2000s into the 2010s, essentially, maybe the late 90s, but for the most part, the first decade of the 2000s, the NFL united and became an office-wide or family-wide source of conversation because even members of the family or members of the office that previously were not fans of the NFL got tired of hearing people talk about their fantasy team and whatever else and said, I want in on the fun. Fine, I'll do it. And I'm going to do it to show to you guys and gals that just because you're a diehard Packer fan, Falcon fan, Cardinal fan, Rams fan, just because you're a diehard fan of those teams doesn't mean that means you know more about the NFL than I do. And so people started joining fantasy football leagues that were not necessarily diehard fans of the NFL. And guess what? All of a sudden, they started watching. I'm like, this is fun. Man, this is kind of cool. I never paid attention before. And all of a sudden, people were watching the NFL that previously had not done so.
Is that Corbin Lingenfelter?
That's right. And the NFL, that allowed it to become what it already was, but that cemented it in the American landscape and culture as the dominant thing. And the Super Bowl became a national holiday and et cetera, et cetera. And yet, For the last several years, and I have joked about it as much as anybody, I have often said soccer, the sport of the future since 1978. But recently I was at dinner with two people younger than I, and I asked about what shows they watch on television. And both of them said, I don't watch as much live TV anymore. Pretty much what I watch is I like watching the English Premier League and different press conferences from Europe about soccer. And if you look at the participation sports in the United States and the number of people that began not having their kids play football because of CTE and thoughts about it and whatever else, and more kids were playing soccer. And for a long time, kids that would play soccer played it until they were 10 or 12 years old, and then they got introduced to football and baseball and basketball and tennis and whatever else, and their interests went elsewhere. And I often said and mocked that soccer had huge numbers in terms of its participation numbers because it was the easiest sport to allow your child to play to learn the value of sport and teamwork and work ethic without exposing if they were not athletic. They never have to go to the free throw line and have everyone stare at them. They don't have to go in the batter's box and have everyone stare at them. There's not a chance they're going to get some huge collision and get a concussion and have people looking at them on the field. In soccer, you can most mask your 7, 8, or 9-year-old kid's lack of athleticism and still have them play a sport where they're just kind of running around and getting exercise and the things that come from sport benefit aside from eventually getting a scholarship. But more and more people now, those young people, because there are viewing options about soccer, are starting to gravitate more towards maintaining their interest in soccer to a later age. And what I took from the halftime show, aside from the fact that I thought the production value of it was great, I thought the energy of it was cool. It reminded me of the early 2000s when you had the Ricky Martin salsa dancing Latin explosion in America. I thought the energy of it was very cool. I thought some of the symbolism from what I understood was very inspiring. But I also understand and respect that a lot of people looked at it and said, why am I watching a guy on the halftime show that doesn't even sing the language that I understand? And I totally understand that, and I don't think that sentiment's wrong. But what's interesting to me is the reason that was out there, in my opinion, is because for the very first time we saw the NFL having to utilize something to try to generate a newer audience. Forever, yeah, Metallica would have been great. Journey would have been great. And you know what? 98.8% of the people that would have tuned in to watch Journey or Metallica were already watching the Super Bowl. So why did the NFL select somebody with 51 million Instagram followers and the leading number of downloads for music in 2025 that doesn't speak English? Because for the first time, what you saw was the NFL, a necessity for the NFL to have to reach and use somebody transcendently to generate eyeballs from an audience that they need to grow their product. It's the first time that we've seen in 30 years the NFL overtly admitting that they, in fact, need to grow their product and need to get and tap into what is somewhat a threat to them. And by that, I mean the culture of soccer and young people in this country and the things that those people enjoy and celebrate and feel comfortable with. They had to get them. They needed some sort of a vehicle to say, bring your eyeballs over here to the Super Bowl, in hopes that they watched the third quarter or the second quarter or something located around the Super Bowl because they otherwise would not have been seeing it. And that speaks to, and before you go into, that's because the NFL has mismarketed or done whatever else, it is rather simply this. We no longer live in a monoculture. We no longer live in a culture where everyone's watching the same channel, everyone's listening to the same stations, everyone's listening to the same music, everyone's being fed the same media things. No matter what your interest is, there is a channel specific to you, there is a streaming app specific to your taste, there is a music specific to what you want to listen to. And so as a result of that, what you are seeing and what you have seen for the last 5 to 6 to 7 to 10 years is different products, whether it be marketed products, whether it be commercial products, whether it be sports entities, different places have had to reach out and use different vehicles to get eyeballs to their brand that otherwise would not be there. Why do you think it is that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway reaches out to and has different people waving the green flag and driving the pace car and doing things like that? Why is it when I go to an IndyCar race in Alabama, they have Bo Jackson as the honorary starter, or Bart Starr as the honorary starter, or someone from American Idol? Why is it when you watch a college football game, they have it? All of that is to get people in that otherwise would not. And so what you saw yesterday was the NFL for the first time going outside of its comfort zone because of necessity of having to reach into a demographic that it feels it never had and now may never get because there is actually a threat outside of it. And to me, it was interesting. There was an interesting aspect to it. And there was high energy on both shows. I get it. I get why people would watch both. It's cool. I totally understand it. But as for why, I thought it was interesting that was the why. Indiana got a big win yesterday. Did you say yay or nay? Next guest. Don Fisher, the voice of the Hoosiers, was on the call for what was, again, Indiana finding a way to win. We will break that down and take a look at what's next for Darren DeVries' group with Don Fisher next.
It's Monday. It's 12:30. It's Fish. The voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fisher, joining Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Well, I was born in a small town, and I live in a small town.
Indiana and Oregon. Next on the docket for the Hoosiers after a win against Wisconsin that, and again, that's the thing about this team. If you look at their last, for that matter, 2 of their last 3 games, finding ways to win. And yes, you could sit here and nitpick all you would like about putting yourself in position, especially in the UCLA game, of kind of letting it get away from you for a second. But in the end, finding ways to win is what you want from your team. Don Fisher was on the call as Indiana found that way against Wisconsin. Oregon tonight, 8:30 tip, and they will honor the 1976 undefeated Hoosiers. Don, I'll begin with this. One of those guys that you got to love when he's on your team, and he probably would drive you just crazy if he's on the other team. But I think it's time for Indiana basketball fans, not that they haven't already, to start giving Connor Enright his flowers, because he just finds ways to make plays and put himself in the right spot late in games. And especially defensively, he can do exactly that. I thought he was really good for Indiana down the stretch against Wisconsin. Your overall thoughts on him?
Well, I think he's played that way, Jake, through much of the season. He's one of those guys that could care less about statistics. He loves to play the game. He loves to win, and that's the most important thing to him. And if it's pretty or it's not pretty, he doesn't care. All he cares about is winning, number one, and then number two, being a major pain in the butt to the opponent, because that's what he is. That's how hard he plays at the defensive end of the floor. And, of course, he tries to take charges, which, you know, he's been able to do that several times here over the last few ball games. He's just one of those guys that you're absolutely 100% right. You hate him if he's not on your team, or if he's not on your team. If he's on your team, you love him.
Don, Indiana obviously has been at their best, and this is probably true of any team, when I think we know now, and I really, and from the very first time I watched him play, I've just really enjoyed Lamar Wilkerson. I just think he's a lightning in a bottle guy, and he knows flat how to score. He's a smart player, a veteran player. Tucker DeVries, we know, has the ability, especially to shoot and to get himself baskets. But Indiana's at their best when they get a reliable third option there. Looked like Nick Dorn might have been that way. He's kind of come back down a little bit, and now Sam Alexis up there. Who is Indiana's, I guess, most consistent and reliable third option, if you will?
Well, that's the question, because Nick Dorn has been the most reliable here probably for the last several weeks, and all of a sudden he's kind of tapered off here in the last 2 ball games. Now, I think part of that, and I'm not 100% sure of this because I don't know who had the flu, but I think that a couple of these guys have been dealing with the flu. In fact, not just a couple, almost the entire team has had to deal with it in some way of dealing with it. And it started really out in California. They had guys out there that kind of got sick. So the truth of the matter is, I think Dorn was one of those. I think he's had the flu. I think he's dealing with that. I think he probably should have by now been over it. And he played pretty hard in that ball game the other night, but he just couldn't make shots. And likewise, in the game against USC, he struggled to make shots. He hit a couple of threes in that ball game, but not the norm. And we've come to expect him to hit 4, maybe 5, even 6 3-pointers in a ball game because of how well he played there for a stretch of games, about 4 or 5. So right now, I would say that Nick is still the third guy. There's no doubt in my mind that he is one of the best shooters on this basketball team. As far as other options are concerned, Enright's even made some threes. In fact, his shooting percentage for three-point land is about 35 or 36%, and Tate Conaway's capable too. So those guys are all capable of hitting threes, but the third option in my mind is Nick Dorn. There's no question, and he just had a couple of games where it didn't happen.
Don, that illness bug. Don Fisher, the voice of the Hoosiers, is our guest. Indiana and Oregon tonight. Don's on the Java House Peel and Port guest line. Tate Conaway is one of those that the illness bug hit, and he was not in the Wisconsin game. Do we know yet, or have you been given any indication his potential availability tonight?
I have not been. I don't know anything about that in that context. I really don't. I mean, he supposedly had the flu. Supposedly, I mean, he had the flu on Saturday. He was sick, didn't even dress for the ball game, wasn't there. So they've kept him away from everybody. And my assumption is that, has the flu bug stopped after 24 hours? I don't know. And I'm not going to ask that question of any players. All I can tell you is that he did have an ankle injury that started actually before the Rutgers ball game. So he's not been available. He's not been a major factor here in the last 4 or 5 ball games now. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes back tonight and if he's able to play at whatever level he's able to play at. And obviously they need him because that depth is something that really Indiana doesn't have very much of.
Don, when you look at teams that, and you've seen a lot of them, right? And I'm curious, we're still getting to know Darren DeVries a little bit and just his mannerisms, his coaching style. From your perspective, late in games, it does feel like Indiana late in games, and I know that the UCLA game, it got away from them, but then they had to make big play after big play in the 2 overtimes to win that ball game. And they did the same against Wisconsin late in the game. What is the overall coaching demeanor of Darren DeVries late in games? Have you been able to observe anything that maybe carries over to his team, or is this simply the byproduct of guys that have played a lot of basketball, even maybe not if so together?
Well, here's what I will tell you, Jake, because I saw this when I went to San Juan, Puerto Rico with him in the summertime. I just think he's a really good basketball coach. I think he knows exactly what he's looking for. I think he knows how to go about recruiting players. I think he knows what he's doing on the sidelines. I'm just impressed with overall his coaching ability and the fact that he gets exercise like every coach does in ball games with officials, maybe with his players sometimes, that kind of thing. But he doesn't go overboard with anything. And I think he keeps his head about him about as well as we've seen a coach in a while here at Indiana. I think he really is smart. I think he gets it. So it's an overall picture for me as far as Darren's concerned, because I just think he does things the right way.
Don, the Indiana 1976 team will be honored tonight. 50th anniversary, of course, coming up in March of their win over Michigan at the Spectrum in Philadelphia. When you look back on that season, and for a lot, I think most people in Indiana know this, but that team was undefeated in the regular season in 75. Scott May broke his arm. They got beat by Kentucky in, I think, overtime in the regionals. But to come back the next season and to know of kind of the expectation, I'm sure, of many of, hey, can they now finish the job? Which to you was more impressive? The 32-0 mark and being unblemished, or dealing with a pressure that had to be kind of hanging around them from the very first outset of that 76 season? Because this wasn't a team that all of a sudden in February people went, wow, they're pretty good. So can you speak to just kind of how they dealt with that when you think back to that season?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is that going into that year, they did not have 2 really key pieces from the year before, Steve Green and John Laskowski. Those 2 guys were integral in regard to Indiana's 31-1 season that led up to that. And, of course, when Scott May got hurt, he actually got hurt in the Purdue game toward the end of the season that year. And they tried to get him back in there during the Mideast Regional to see if he could play against Kentucky. And obviously he got out there and wasn't able to perform like he normally does. And they had to take him back out of the ball game. But losing both Laskowski and Green, everybody wondered who was going to take those guys' spots. Laz was always the guy that came off the bench and gave them big minutes and big plays and really smart basketball. And likewise, Steve Green was the same kind of player. I would argue that the next year, the question mark was who's going to replace those guys. Well, Tom Abernathy obviously came in as a starter and was terrific. Of course, he played quite a bit his junior year leading up to the 32-0 season as well, but he was not the main guy coming off the bench. And he just fit perfectly with what Bob Knight was trying to do with that team in 76. and then who was going to come off the bench. And obviously they got really good play out of Jim Wisman at times. They got good play out of Wayne Radford at times. Jim Cruz, of course, was a starter for a couple of years leading up to the 75-76 season. Didn't start that year, but came off the bench and was really a smart basketball player and did all the right things and did make a lot of mistakes, that kind of stuff. So they had solid play coming off the bench as well. And I can honestly tell you, Jake, that I went into every single basketball game in 76 thinking Indiana was going to win, and they did. And that doesn't mean that I had anything to do with it. It just means that I was that confident. And I think I told you this earlier about Signetti and about this Indiana football team this year. I just go into every game thinking they got a great chance of winning this ball game. I don't think they're going to get beat.
Yeah,
that's the way it turned out.
And you know, I was late to that party, but by the end of it, I mean, there's no doubt. And from the football standpoint, you looked at every game and you're like, well, they're not going to make mistakes. I know that much, right? You know, and Don, I'm sure when you were boarding the bus or the plane or whatever it might have been in Philadelphia in 1976, I'm fairly certain that you sat back and you thought to yourself, well, I'll bet you 50 years from now, this still will not be repeated by a college basketball team, and I'll bet I'll still be on the mic for Indiana for their undefeated football season. That's exactly what you said, right?
Jake, I didn't know I'd be around the next year after the 32-0 season.
Well, listen, I mean, you were the good luck charm, Don. They knew. They said, if we can just keep this guy around, football's going undefeated, baby. That's exactly what happened.
Well, then why is it not the case for the last 25 years? We haven't done it again.
That's right.
I don't think I had a daggone thing to do with it, Jay, just so you know.
Well, listen, obviously it'll be a fun night tonight. Indiana and Oregon honoring the 76 team. And, Indiana's played themselves now on the right side of the bubble for the NCAA tournament, Don, I believe. And as long as they stay the course, I think they've got things going in the right direction, but still some pieces to kind of reacclimate there. So we'll see what happens tonight. 8:30 tip for Indiana basketball. Don, appreciate the time as always.
Thanks for having me, Jake. I appreciate it.
All right, Don Fisher, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Okay, as for last night and the Super Bowl and the Pacers as well, one thing happened in the Pacers game we're still trying to keep track of today, and that is Johnny Furphy's injury. Obviously, he suffered an injury, what looked to be to his knee. There has been no specific indication as of the time that we took the air today, Eddie, and I believe that is still the case, right?
That is
they
still
were
the
simply
case.
saying right leg injury.
They said right leg soreness yesterday. Okay. That's what they listed it as.
And so we'll wait to see. But they do have new pieces coming to the Pacers. Eddie Gill will join us 1:30 to talk about that. But there's two things that happened in the Super Bowl that were awesome. Awesome. And I'll explain what they were next. Hey there, Jake Quarry for Game Day Men's Health with clinics in the Indy metro area, including Avon, Carmel, Fishers, and Greenwood. I've been to the Carmel Clinic of Game Day Men's Health, and it's fabulous because not only sports theme and very laid back, but efficient. In and out in 1 hour. What am I talking about? Whatever therapy, guys, it may be for getting you back in the game. Getting rid of that midday, just all of a sudden the fatigue kicks in or just feeling sluggish. Whatever it may be, it could be that you're low testosterone, and they can test for that right there at game day. Could be that peptides are for you, and by that I mean I'm talking about recovery and helping out with ligaments, joints after a workout. There are a number of therapies, weight loss injections as well, available from Game Day Men's Health. And you can get a custom game plan for you, not a one-size-fits-all, but a game plan for you to get back in the game, reclaim your game, and start feeling that youth again. Game Day Men's Health, locations in Avon, Carmel, Fishers, and Greenwood. You can make an appointment for any of the clinics and find out all of the offerings at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. That's GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
So last night, Super Bowl 60, I think most people would agree it just lacked oomph overall, right? I mean, literally, open disclaimer. I've always kind of liked the Seahawks. I mean, I've always mentioned that. I'm not like some diehard fan. I don't sit there and, follow their stuff in the offseason and what moves they're making, whatever else. I've always liked their logo and their color scheme. And their players, they've got some fun players. But The game itself, it just seemed to me, and folks can absolutely tell me if I'm wrong here, Eddie, you included. I don't know what it is, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but I think the world is just changing in general. And by that I mean, for years, when you were watching television the week of the Super Bowl, there would be ads for your local grocery store of get your Super Bowl platter. They could never say the big game. Get your platter for the big game. Get your pizzas for the big game on Sunday or the big weekend. When you went into the grocery store, there was a huge chip display in the shape of a football, or they had cookie platters made with the logo of both teams that were going to be in the Super Bowl. And it just was everywhere in the American landscape and culture. And as we talked about last week, I just felt like there wasn't any of that this week. But then I realized, I'm like, we're not watching network television like we were 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
People are watching a million different streaming. Most of the stuff I watch now is streaming, commercial-free, that kind of thing.
But let me ask you this. How much programming on NBC are you taking in? I think this is a big part of it because I don't think NBC has a lot of, at least personally speaking, a lot of programming that I am interested in watching. So therefore, I didn't get all the same, promotions and commercials leading up to the Super Bowl as I would if it was on Fox or if it was on CBS.
But what I'm saying is, even if it were on those, no matter what channel it's on, even if it was on a different network, if you were watching Fox,
yes,
typically, even though the Super Bowl is on NBC,
yeah,
in most years, if you're watching The Simpsons on Fox 59,
yes,
there is a commercial in there for something based in Indianapolis promoting their service they provide to accentuate your Super Bowl experience. And I just didn't feel like we had that this year.
I totally agree.
Part of it is also, and I was a little surprised it was on NBC because I'm like, wait a minute, they have the Olympics going on. And it was funny to me. I don't know if anybody else noticed this. In years past, typically, it's a huge deal, and there are a billion commercials promoting what is going to be following the Super Bowl. Now, this year it's different because it was the Olympics, but they literally were like, congratulations, Seattle Seahawks. Here's the trophy, and Kenneth Walker, here's the MVP, and now here's Lindsey Vonn.
Yeah.
Boom. Out.
That's how NBC does all of their, even like their Sunday night games. It's Mike Tirico and Collinsworth. They do their quick hit. Melissa Stark does the post-game interview with the stars of the game, and then they get out, and all the post-game coverage moves to Peacock.
Yeah, I get that, the Peacock thing as well. But here were the two things that were fun. Now, admittedly, when we made our predictions for the Super Bowl, you said Seattle, correct, Eddie?
I did 28-10. I was so close.
And I said that I thought New England would win a game in 23-21, I think I said, because the only reason I said that is because Seattle was such a resounding favorite. And typically when that happens, sometimes the underdog sneaks in and is able to hang around. I thought their defense was not terrible, but Seattle was so disruptive to Drake May, they just never got any footing. But as for the coin toss at the beginning of the game, at the end of the show on Friday, I did predict this. Again, reminder, they will call tails, it will land heads, winning team will defer, and Patriots win. Okay, and again, I said Patriots win. But and here's what's funny, and I sounded terrible on Friday. Do you notice, Eddie, do you remember several years ago, there was this online phenomenon of a blue dress that people were debating whether it was blue, gold, or green or whatever. Is this a blue dress or a gold dress? And it depended on what people's eyes saw to determine what color the dress was. And it was this huge ongoing debate forever. Okay. It seemed to me like the coin toss was a little bit of that because half the population heard him say heads and half the population heard him say tails. Did you notice that? If I said to you he called heads, do you happen to have the audio of the coin toss? Look on the X because people were posting it yesterday. If you listen to the audio of the coin toss yesterday, it sounded, if I said to you, he calls heads, your ears can actually hear it that way. Then you listen to it closer and you're like, no, that's tails. But there were a lot of people, myself included, when Cooper Kupp called the coin toss, that were like, he said heads. Why did they say tails? Obviously, if you're standing right down there as the official is, you hear it and you can see him saying it. But it was interesting because the audio either way seemed to be that way. But the game itself, once it started, the other cool thing that happened was I thought personally, and we saw this in the Rose Bowl, I thought they should have.
You were wrong on your prediction.
What's that?
It was heads. Tails was called.
No, I said they would call tails and it would be heads, right? What? Play my prediction again.
Again, reminder.
My voice
They
sounds
will call
terrible there.
tails. It will land heads. Winning team
No,
will defer.
I corrected
And
myself.
Patriots win.
Yeah, that's right.
I corrected myself.
Here's the audio.
Tails is the choice.
Okay, play that again.
Tails. Tails is the choice.
It sounds like he says both, doesn't he?
It sounds like he says hails.
It does. He started to say heads and switched it. Play it again.
Tails is the choice.
But no, I predicted that they would call tails.
Yeah, you're
it would
right.
land
Yeah,
heads.
you're right.
Yeah. But either way, can
My
you name
short-term
for me?
memory
Eddie?
was not on it there.
What's that?
My short-term memory was not on it.
That's
there.
right. I think personally that what they should have done is like what they did in the Rose Bowl. In the Rose Bowl, when they named MVP and they gave it to the starting center for Indiana in commemoration of their entire offensive line, they should have given the Seahawks a defense. And I know not just because I said a defensive player will be most valuable player, but the Seahawks defense was the most valuable player in that game. And yes, you can go with Jason Myers. I get it, the kicker.
I push back on that. He made 0 important kicks, and he made
that's
0
fair.
of impressive length.
I don't disagree with that.
241-yard field goal. Like, come on.
That's fair. That's fair.
Those are
But-
chip shots.
But he delivered more times in a Super Bowl than any kicker in the history of the game. I get it.
Perhaps. I mean,
But
that's the story of the Seattle season.
Either way,
too.
it should have been the defense, but going with a running back is cool. Question is, when's the last time that happened? Think about that in that big noggin. I'll give you the answer other side.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, Eddie, did you come up with the correct answer?
Yes. I
Yesterday,
knew this.
the first running back Super Bowl MVP since?
I know the answer, but I'm going to turn the tables on you here, Jake.
Okay.
I don't want to reveal the answer because we have 2 tickets for somebody to go see Post Malone Jelly Roll this summer to give away 2 pairs of tickets. The first 2 people to text in with the correct answer, they will be the winners and have tickets to go see Jelly Roll and Post Malone.
Okay, so, and by the way, somebody asked, the last time we did this on the text message, somebody asked if we ever declared the winner publicly. Said who the winner was.
No, I did not, because I didn't have the winner information at the time.
Okay. This time we'll get that?
Hopefully.
So,
317-239-1070, text in the correct answer.
who was the last running back to be the most valuable player of the Super Bowl until yesterday? That is the question du jour. Eddie Gill going to join us coming up bottom of the hour. We'll get the latest not only on the Johnny Furphy injury, but also just the Pacers in general. And I had mentioned when the trade was announced for Zubats, I love it. I think, and as time has gone on here and I'm looking back, sometimes you have a knee-jerk reaction to things where you're like, this is awesome. Then you look back and you go, I don't know. The Sauce Gardner trade comes to mind. I'll admit from the get-go, I was like, yeah, I'm not overly sold on this. He's a wonderful talent, but he was a wonderful talent that helped New York win 2 games, and they were willing to part with him. Then what you gave up is the question. For Indiana, and I watched again this weekend, some of the wings that are going to be in the draft here. I watched Wilson play for North Carolina. I saw Peterson for Kansas. DeBonce, I've seen a fair amount for BYU. Boozer, obviously, I saw. The point is this. If Indiana, the Pacers, end up with a top 4 pick, then this trade, I still say, is a grand slam. Now, you're going to have to alter a little bit the way you play. And you have to alter the way you play because of the fact that Zubats, as good as he is, the one area, and we'll talk to Eddie Gill about this, the one area to me that could be of question is whether or not he takes up space that is within too much the operating area of Pascal Siakam. All of you, when you were kids, not all of you, but if you were a kid and you had siblings and you went on the family vacation, going on the family vacation, you're driving to Florida. And by the way, I know it's wonderful. This is I'm off now on a personal opinion here. And people can text me and tell me if they totally disagree with me. That's fine. And I also understand that I was fortunate enough to have a very idyllic childhood and one in which I look on very favorably, and I'm well aware of the fact and respect that not everybody unfortunately had that. I get it. But when I was a kid and we would take family vacations, we always drove to Florida. I'm sure my parents financially could have afforded to fly, but we drove. And I have always said, now that we're at the age where my parents are aging and, my sisters and I, we all have our own families, whatever you want to say. The thing that I look back on the most favorably from those vacations was the drive in the cars. And because it was the 5 of us and my mom distributing Tootsie Pops at the appropriate mile markers and playing games in the car and passing time, but it was just the 5 of us. And that had as much to do with the family bond as anything I experienced. But I digress. When you did that, even with all of that said, when you're really little, you had that space in the back seat with your siblings where you had an imaginary line, or even if your parents were creative, a piece of like masking tape. And you're like, no, This is my spot in the back seat. Like, you cannot, Mom, Megan's got her left arm in my space. Kids, you settle down. We'll turn around the car. We won't go on vacation this year. All that, right? But you had your space in the back seat. And Pascal Siakam for the Pacers, when it comes to the low block or the baseline, kind of has his space. Starts on one block, curls his way into the lane, makes one move, and that determines whether he's going to go in and lay it in off the glass or whether he's going to spin fadeaway. And Zubac is going to have to learn that space belongs to Pascal Siakam and make sure that he is not clogging that space. That's going to take some acclimation. And that's probably what this year is for. Do you, in terms of, and then you have the added wrinkle of offensively speaking, if Zubac is not somebody that is going to be trailing and start up in the high post and the ball comes up to him and he turns around and then he picks and facilitates where that weave begins like Miles Turner did for so long. If he's not going to be that player, then you've got to work on and figure out the timing of his work with Tyrese Halliburton on pick and rolls and on the low post and lobs in particular. And that doesn't come, of course, until Halliburton's on the floor. So that's the other aspect of it. But the key point is this. For Indiana, the Pacers right now, with their draft pick being protected as 1 through 4 or 10 and beyond, that means that if on the draft lottery in May, the ping pong balls pop up, that Indiana is drafting 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th, that trade goes to the Clippers. 1 through 4 is protected, and Indiana absolutely knows the importance of there's a reason they protected those. Because in a perfect world, you knew when Miles Turner left, you knew then that his departure meant that you needed to go out and get a center. And you knew that to get a starting center who has experience in the NBA, that meant you were going to have to give up something to get a player of a starting center quality. And they got that. And the player they gave up was Ben Mathurin. And Isaiah Jackson as well, I realize. But in giving up Mathurin, you then created the second void. You created the second area of need. A scoring threat off the bench who could play spot minutes in the starting spot as well, as Mathurin has done. And they knew going into it that the realistic avenue that they would take to get that player would be the draft. And now it comes down to getting those 4 picks. And their roster is good enough for next year that if they end up drafting 10 through whatever, they might still get a player that's of some need to them.
Or, Jake, they could trade that pick still.
Correct.
And get a player that fits whatever they need. Because I was listening to Tony's podcast last week, and he did make mention that it's not a terrible idea either if the Pacers lose their pick, because it gives them more flexibility with trading future picks. Because if they keep the pick this year, they can only trade their 2027 pick, and you'd have to wait a little while before they can trade their next one, since you can't trade picks in consecutive drafts per the NBA rules.
So you're okay. So you could not trade first round picks, right?
Yes, and since the
did they trade their first round? Who did they take last year? They traded their first rounder.
They traded their first round pick last year
so they could not trade this year's first rounder again, right? Well, no, they already traded this year's first round.
I'd have to look at that.
They already traded this year's, and they traded back for it.
They did, yeah.
But I'm here to tell you though, if the Pacers land in pick 1 through 4, they're using that pick.
100%. 100%. That's why you put the protection on there.
Correct. Now the other thing, but I want to talk to Eddie Gill about that. He comes up bottom of the hour.
I also have a thought, by the way, on the pairing of Siakam and Zubac, as you were talking about there. Like, Siakam being on the post, Jake, I actually think this can help him because currently the Pacers aim with Miles Turner. Neither Turner or any of their centers they currently have were big post-up guys, and you didn't have to worry about them as much on the post, so it was a lot easier to double team. And now, if you have Zubats on the opposite post or you have him at the high post, teams have to make their decision. Am I going to go double? And I'm going to leave either A, a shooter open, or B, if you're helping off of Zubats with whomever's defending him, all Siakam has to do is pass it to Zubats on a cut to the basket, and you got an easy dunker and easy layup. So I think this is going to help Siakam in that post-up game a little bit. I don't think it's going to negatively impact him.
Yeah, but you got to keep him fluid.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
In agreement
I mean, that's the big thing. You got to keep him fluid. But that's what this year is. Again, it's an acclimation period for Zubats and figuring out how he plays and getting him acclimated to that, and then also realistically trying to strategically stay within bounds of those top 4 picks. Or if you get to the point where all of a sudden you get on a heater and you get out of it, then you're trying to make sure that you are getting away from 5 through 9 and into 10. But that remains to be seen. Other thing, and I mentioned it off the top, that I thought was interesting yesterday. I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. As a younger person, probably more just, waste and vinegar, to paraphrase a term, when I was younger. I was arrogant enough and naive enough to think that in doing sports talk radio, that opining and getting into discussion and debate when it came to politics or scruples or principles or culture on the radio during a sports show was going to change people's minds, and that it was this great responsibility. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think that when you have the platform that we are afforded, and I want to make clear I'm well aware of the fact that I'm afforded the platform. I don't own it. And I'm also well aware of the fact that there are probably a lot of people that like me, not because of me, but because of the platform. I get all of that. And I understand the responsibility that comes with it and the inevitable conclusion that someday will come with it. I understand all of that. I do think that with that platform, there are times and there are topics that are responsible for us to bring into the limelight for people that are listening. But it would be naive of me and arrogant of me to think that telling people how they should think or process things is the way to go about it. Because you're all adults. You're all smart people. I can introduce different things to make you think, but it would be – I've seen what happens when radio hosts suddenly like to talk about how their word is the only word and everyone else but them is – a moron or uneducated or whatever else. I've seen how that works out, right? There's a reason I don't have to get up at 5:30 in the morning anymore. But having said all that, I totally understand during the halftime show last night, which was a huge topic of the Super Bowl. And with that Super Bowl, with not a lot of excitement in the game itself, really sound defensive game for Seattle. But it wasn't an overly exciting or sexy Super Bowl. And I've heard very little conversation about the commercials, which is interesting. Usually people the next day are like, oh, man, rank your favorite Super Bowl commercials or go online and see your favorite. I heard very little discussion about them. A lot of the pomp and circumstance that goes into the NFL and the halftime show, and the accentuation of that, aside from the halftime show, I didn't hear a lot of talk about. And I totally understand and respect if people wanted to see other options at halftime other than the halftime show because it was an artist with which they were unfamiliar or didn't like or whatever. Fine. For years, people would turn over to watch the Puppy Bowl, which I watched a little of yesterday. It was cool. I felt bad for the dogs. They're all rescue dogs. I think probably all of them got adopted.
I think there was one from Indiana.
Was there?
I think so.
But so for years people would, or the Bud Light, remember the Bud Bowl? People would turn over to watch the Bud Bowl at halftime. Nobody got on you about that. So if people wanted to watch an alternate form of music or entertainment that was more to their liking or their taste, cool. That's fine. What I thought was interesting was this. This, to me, seemed to be the first time that the NFL did something that other leagues have done for a long time. Why do you, if IndyCar is racing in Long Beach, why does IndyCar take a driver and have them throw out the first pitch at the Dodger game? It's because they are hoping that means that people that are Dodgers fans that otherwise don't know about the Long Beach race suddenly become aware of it. Why does the Indianapolis 500 bring in Lance Armstrong or Jack Nicholson or any other such people to wave the green flag? It's because it's in hope that seeing someone that people relate to that otherwise are unaware of the Indianapolis 500, you are using those things as a vehicle to introduce yourself to a newer audience. And you see it across in all areas of sport. But the one area where you never really needed or saw a desire by the league to have to introduce itself to a new demographic was the NFL. Because the NFL has been the 800-pound gorilla forever. And the NFL really has been the trendsetter, and their numbers dictate they still are. I know several years ago, there were a lot of people that said they were going to boycott the NFL, but the NFL now did 23 of the top 25 rated programs on television in 2025. But some of those numbers are a little askew because we no longer live in a monoculture. And a monoculture meaning everyone getting their cultural stimulation from the same places. It's not 1985, it's not 1995, where you had 3 major channels and then 15 cable channels and 10 radio stations. I'm well aware, everyone at this station is well aware, that there are a number of places that you can listen to your music, you can listen to your podcast, you can listen to any number of things. I appreciate that people give their time to listen to this show. But there are so many different avenues and areas where people can consume their entertainment now that they can custom make and witness things to what they like without having to be introduced to things outside their area or their comfort zone. We saw it last night. But what I saw in the halftime show was an incredible theatrical performance, and by that I mean the production quality, the special effects, the background dancers, the themes of what was going on about the importance of family structure within the Puerto Rican culture and community, and the importance of Puerto Rican belief as being part of and the blessing they have in being part of America. And their pride in being part of America. That's what I saw in that. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I didn't know the lyrics, right? But more importantly, what I saw was this. It was the first time that I saw the NFL admitting that they needed to use a vehicle to tap into a demographic that they have not yet controlled. And that demographic of, and I've been hearing soccer's been the sport of the future since 1978. And I always rolled my eyes at it because, as I said, it was the biggest participation sport for young people for many years in this country because it was the sport that if your child was not overly athletic or was stage fright, shy of things, you didn't have to get in the batter's box. You didn't have to get in the free throw line. You didn't run the risk of serious injury. Your child could learn the importance of teamwork and work ethic and weekly practice for an event by playing soccer, and then on the field itself could run around and get their exercise without really ever having the spotlight shine on them and their lack of athleticism being illuminated to the masses. So it was a safe place for people to have their kids play, and kids enjoyed it. And then they got to 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and they got introduced to baseball, basketball, football, tennis, whatever it might be, and they went elsewhere. But for the last 15 years or so, maybe a little bit more and more of those kids now are opting to stay with soccer. And as a result, they are opting to not follow the Green Bay Packers or the Denver Broncos or the San Francisco 49ers, but rather to follow Man City or Liverpool or Real Madrid. And those are becoming their favorite teams. And so therefore, even young kids in Latin America or in that culture, while at one time they had no choice but to eventually assimilate towards watching the Super Bowl and the NFL because that was the dominant thing in American culture, there are now enough options from a viewing and participating standpoint where those people are being weaned off of the necessity for the NFL in the 15 to 35-year-old demographic. And so what do? But you find the biggest pop culture icon within that demographic and you put that one on the halftime show. Yes, it would have been very cool to see Metallica in San Francisco playing the halftime show, or Journey, or if he was still performing, Huey Lewis. They're all natives of that area. But 98% of people that listen to their music, also their other big interest is the National Football League. They took the most downloaded performer in the world, who has 51 million followers on social media platforms, and put that individual there because 98% of the people listening to his music are not those that are watching the NFL. And they had to introduce themselves to a new demographic. And to me, I would like to think that the NFL at this point has reached the same maturity I have of you're not going to influence people in their thought. You are not bigger than one's own individual intellect and ability to decipher what's best for them. You simply need to provide something entertaining and hope that that means people then, as the vehicle, see everything else that is on the pie itself, and they enjoy the pie instead of just the topping on it and say, I like all of that. And now you've introduced yourself to a demographic that otherwise is partaking in something that is one of the, albeit very small, but a small threat to the continuation of your culture as the 800-pound gorilla in American sport. And that's what I saw, as opposed to the divisive politics that I understand a lot of people saw that as. That's how I interpreted it. What happens with the Pacers now with Zubats and the acclimation period? Eddie Gill played point guard NBA, also on the television broadcast for the Pacers, joins us next. Hey there, Jake Query for Game Day Men's Health. Clinics in the Indy metro area include Avon, Carmel, Fishers, and Greenwood. Carmel locations where I went. And you're saying, well, Jake, that's great. Tell me more about Game Day Men's Health and what it was that you saw. Okay, I will. Laid-back atmosphere and in and out in an hour. That's great, Jake. In and out in an hour, laid-back atmosphere. Tell me more. Well, what I mean is they got snacks and refreshments for you there. It's a sports theme. Very laid-back and professional staff. Clinical and FDA-approved pharmacies. I went in, just for example, had a blood draw right there. And I hate needles, but that actually went well, just to make sure that all of the blood work that I'm giving them was up to what is necessary in terms of my health. Because at Game Day Men's Health, it's all about getting you back in the game and making sure that you are overcoming the things like that midday fatigue that can take place. Perhaps your testosterone level's low, peptide therapy, weight loss injections for that matter. They do all of that at Game Day Men's Health, and they do it all right there, like I said, with FDA-approved pharmacies, but custom-made to a game plan for you to get you back in the game. The peptide therapies can help out just in recovery, so not necessarily as sore after workouts, running, and etc. There are a number of different things provided for Game Day Men's Health, all custom-made for you to get you back in the game. Game Day Men's Health. Find them online. Get a consultation. Make an appointment at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. That's GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Eddie Gill, of course, point guard extraordinaire for the Pacers. Now, do you say Weber State or Weber State?
Weber.
It's Chris Webber, Weber State, right?
Yes.
That much we know.
Yeah.
But Eddie Gill, obviously, on the television broadcast FanDuel Sports Network.
I don't know if you know this, Jake, but he holds the record for people with steals at Weber State with just 4 years of eligibility.
Really?
None of the COVID year crap.
None of the 9-year players have broken the record yet?
See, 4 years, Weber State, boom, your steals leader all time in program history, Eddie Gill.
Not only that, Eddie Gill, a huge fan of using QR. Did you know that, Eddie?
No.
Yeah, he speaks in code.
You might have gone too far with that, but
Thank you.
But another fun fact: I was there for only 2 years, so there's that.
Oh, that's right.
Wow, and you have the record in 2 years?
Well, actually, so Dylan Jones, who actually I think is with the Knicks now, he got drafted by OKC. He was at Weber State. He was there for all four, and like 2 games left in the season, I think his senior year he broke my record. So technically he has the record, but he was there for 4, I was there for 2. But
yeah, I mean that's got to
never mind the details.
That has to come with an asterisk on it, right? Which a lot of people would call a code, kind of like QR, Eddie. Okay, Eddie, I want to ask you this, Eddie Gill. So you played as a point guard position, though. I'm curious. When you look now at Zubats, and I appreciate your perspective here because this is what I wanted to talk to you about. There is going to be so much that is made of, with Zubats here and then Tyrese Halliburton and trying to get that same sort of symmetry that you saw with above-the-rim style play that Halliburton can do and facilitate for so many people. When you are a point guard and guys need to be in certain areas because I worry about Siakam's spacing on the floor and whether or not some of that's going to be clogged, how much of the job is it of the point guard to kind of direct people and or get people in their right operating areas when you're setting things up? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And having played the position, I put probably 95% of the onus on the point guard to organize out there. I think that's, the infamous, or not to say infamous, but, I don't use it as much because we're in this whole age of quote-unquote positionless basketball, which I think is a little bit overused because as point guards are valuable and certain positions are and such, but it's going to be a different game. I think, Tyrese and whoever the point guard is on any team, they have an innate responsibility of being able to organize and put your team in position to be successful because, when you're in that arena, it's not like you're in a middle school gym where the coach can call every single set and you can hear every single thing. Those guys got to be able to communicate with each other out there, and the point guard has got to do the best job of organizing, and it'll look different than what everyone thinks may think it looks like what it's going to look like last year. It won't, because he's a different player than Turner. He's a different player than Pascal. He's a different player than Obi Toppin. All these guys that Tyrese or whoever else at the point is running ball screens with.
And you look at, Eddie, I'm going to go back to when you were playing for the Pacers. So you had, amongst others, but among the sitters that you played with, David Harrison, Scott Pollard, Jeff Foster. Now, those are 3. Pollard and Harrison are pretty similar just in their size, but Foster was a more springy sprint guy, if you will. Did you have to adjust your game depending on which one was on the floor with you?
Yeah, definitely. You have to play to the strengths and weaknesses of your team, right? The whole saying, KYP, know your personnel, and how do you put them in position. Now, that
KYP there, know your personnel, that sounds like you're speaking in QR code right there. So when you say that KYP, if you want to be extra hip, Eddie, because you're a hip guy, you can then say QR, just to let people know. But anyway, as you were.
I need somebody to let me know when this fades to black.
Fair enough.
But you're gonna keep trying. I appreciate it though.
That's right.
It just might catch on. I mean, 6'7" is out there, so whatever.
Right. That's what I mean. This is the new the 6'7" so last year. This is the new thing.
Yeah. Right. But we digress. But that team you referenced, my job when I got out there on the floor, especially if Jermaine was on the floor, he needed to touch the ball. So we ran a lot through Jermaine. But as it pertains to like DH or Jeff or Scott, we're running ball screen, a lot of pick and roll and replace actions with those guys. That was a day and age where big guys were shooting 15 to 17 footers and not 23 to 26 footers. So it's obviously a different game. But yeah, you absolutely need to know, your team's strong suits and what they do best. Are they good? Can they catch the ball? Can they catch a bounce pass? Do they need to, it has to hit them in the chest every single time. Otherwise, it's going to be a turnover. Just all the nuance of the game that most people probably don't think about.
Do you like the trade?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think it's obviously that position has been experimental to some degree. No disrespect to the guys who've played it this year, because I think all of them have done positive things at different moments throughout the season. But clearly, it was a move to try to solidify the center position. Zubats is a big-time rebounder. It's been a place of deficiency for the Pacers for quite some time, even as great as they were last year. Rebounding has been a concern for some time, so he's going to help in that capacity. He's a guy that helps you get extra possessions. He does a lot of things that necessarily don't get into a stat sheet, although he's a guy who averages a double-double. But these small things like setting screens, for example. You referenced Tyrese Halliburton and him being able to create in space. If that guy sets a screen for you, Tyrese is going to be able to come off and do his thing. Andrew Nembhard, TJ McConnell, who's ever at the point, they're going to have some more space. And then that just makes everybody on the floor better because now they have more open opportunities.
Bennedict Mathurin, Eddie, obviously on his way to Los Angeles now. Now, the thought would be that the Pacers get one of those top 4 picks, and that's what I've said. That this trade then to me goes from a home run to a grand slam. If you can get, whether it be Boozer, Peterson, DeBonsa, Wilson, any of those 4 guys to take over that role, then I think this is a huge trade. But if they are not able to get that, if they fall outside that top 4 and they lose their first-round pick, who do you see getting or logging the minutes that would have been Bennedict Mathurin's next year? Where do they fill that void?
Well, then you're looking at potentially going back to the lineup that you had, last season, really with Nembhard at the 2 and Nesmith at the 3, potentially. Pascal at the 4 and Zubac at the 5 is what seems to be what might be the lineup. Now who that's all things, considering that nothing happens in the summertime outside of the draft. But I would foresee that them going back to that type of lineup.
And then obviously the guy, Eddie, crazy to say this, I'm not going to say that we forget about, and you referenced him earlier, but one of the things I think people do forget about this year without Halliburton being out there and with Nembhard and Nesmith missing significant time, Obi Toppin's a really important piece, right? And assuming he comes back with the same level of, maneuverability that he had before, he is a guy that can kind of be your instant offense off-bench guy again, right?
Oh, there's no question about it. And I think I would caution everybody to proceed with a little bit of hesitancy in terms of thinking that all of a sudden you're going to be back in the finals because you got Zubac, who I really like as a player, but so many things have to go right for you to get to that type of level of play. I think definitely be a very competitive team. I thought this year's team would be very competitive. Obviously derailed and go into a tailspin with injuries early on in the season. But I would still, proceed with caution. And you referenced Obi. This is a team that relies on 8, 9, 10 guys to be productive on a nightly basis when at full strength. So, Obi Toppin certainly is a critical piece of that, coming off what he was able to do coming off the bench, the energy that he played with. Sometimes he was in closing lineups where Rick Carlisle decided to go small, and he would be at the 5 and Pascal was at the 4, and they would just run people out of the gym late in the game with him on the floor. So his game has definitely taken another step. Hopefully he makes a full recovery and is able to come back with that same athleticism and explosion that he has, because he's one of us, in a league full of athletes, he's top 5 in there of all of them.
Eddie, do we have any more information today, Eddie Gill, our guest, Java House Peel and Poor Guest Line, on the injury of Johnny Furphy or his availability?
I have no clue what's going on with that. Obviously we all hope for the best for him. And if you were watching that game and saw, every one of his teammates were out there on the floor checking on him, he's like a little brother to everybody. And more than anything else, you're just checking on his well-being, his psyche, and his mental capacity, especially, he's had this opportunity to be in the lineup and play some real minutes.
I was just going to say that, had we just started to see in the last month or so the game kind of slowing down for him and Johnny Furphy starting to figure out and learn what his role was and start to execute that?
I think he's still got a long ways to go, even though he's had this opportunity. I mean, this experience has been really good for him, but definitely him being able to take on some tough defensive challenges, called upon to run the floor, rebound the basketball when he has an opportunity to take perimeter shots, take those with confidence without hesitating. Hesitancy and uncertainty is the death of all of us when you're trying to execute something. So you got to go out there with confidence, and sometimes that gets to him. But I think there's development for him down the road, but this has been a great experience for him.
Eddie, I know you like to watch both basketball and other professional sports. On the collegiate front, have you been able to watch a bunch of either Darren Peterson, AJ DeBansic, Caleb Wilson, or Cameron Boozer? And if so, what are your thoughts on any of those guys?
I haven't watched a bunch. I wouldn't say I've watched a bunch, but I've definitely watched some. I love college basketball, as you mentioned. So I watched a little bit. But those guys are phenomenal talents. All of those guys. The one thing I like about all of them, aside from just their skill set, is they all have good motors. Darren Peterson has missed some games, so that read into that what you may. So he hasn't been out there as available as much as those other guys. But I don't. You can't go wrong with either one of those guys. It's just a matter of fit and what a team might need in that moment.
Pacers and New York Knicks tomorrow night, 7:30. You can see Eddie on that broadcast. Pregame can be heard on this radio station beginning at 7 p.m. tomorrow night. Eddie, appreciate the time as always, man. And you're only permitted to use the QR when you see me 2 more times. And then after that, you can fade it out if you'd like.
I got you. I yelled it at you the other night when I saw you. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I heard it. Yeah.
So he wasn't making that up.
The highlight. Yeah,
Eddie.
I did. I told Eddie, and he's like, no, you're lying. I said, no. He said it, I think twice now you've said it to me. Yeah. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, we'll just keep it between you and I.
That's right.
Thank
All
you.
right, appreciate it, Eddie. Eddie Gill joining us on the program. Furphy is starting to, he is a good rebounder, and as he has gotten a little more confident, his outside shot has become better as well, but or more consistent as well. But that injury yesterday, certainly was bothersome. Now, speaking of bothersome and injuries, there was another one that I saw yesterday, and it raised a question that I thought to myself, I can't be the only one wondering this. And if you wondered it too, you're going to feel better because I'm going to say it, and you're going to go, yep, see, I knew I wasn't the only one. I'll explain next.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Now, you had to know where I was going with this, Eddie, to play this song.
Jake, even though I may act dumb, unintelligent at times, I know where you're going most of the time.
Thank you.
We've
I'm that predictable?
Well, no, we've worked together long enough now. We've done so many shows. I know. I kind of have an idea where you're going.
Do you consider being the co-pilot of this program? Do you consider this more each and every day like a boring train ride through like Kansas on an Amtrak, or do you consider this more of like the Beast at Kings Island?
A root canal at the dentist office.
Okay, fair enough. There are two sporting events on television that I genuinely enjoy, even if not a fan per se of the sports themselves. One is the World Cup. I always enjoy the World Cup. I'm not a huge soccer fan. I've tried many a time to get into soccer. I'm not a huge fan of it. But I enjoy the World Cup because of all of the pageantry and tradition and meaning of all of it. But also because, A, I enjoy the underdog story. I like seeing the small countries that, because I do think a lot about this. I'll see a country, and I won't name any particular nation, but I'll see a country, it's their first trip to the World Cup, or they're a smaller country that's war-torn or impoverished. And I think to myself, if they were to go really far in this, that gives that country's people something to cheer about and feel good about and gives them hope. And so I can cheer for something like that. And I also like the fact that when the World Cup is on, you just kind of know it's like the friend that's always there. When you turn your TV on, when you get home from dinner or a night out, or when you get up in the morning, or if it's raining outside, there's going to be the World Cup to watch, right? And that's cool. Now, the Olympics are much the same way, and in particular, the Winter Olympics. I like the Winter Olympics because it introduces me to a lot of sports of which I otherwise would normally never see. And also, it introduces you to nations that you're previously unfamiliar. Now, I was surprised during the opening ceremonies. Well, the opening ceremonies Friday night, right?
They were Friday at 2:00 for us.
So it aired for us.
8 p.m.
Right, but it aired for us in the primetime Friday night, right?
No, it aired for us at 2 p.m. in the afternoon Friday.
But it re-aired on the primetime Friday night.
Okay,
is what I'm getting at. So as I'm watching it Friday evening, I didn't know, and I'm not even trying to be funny, I did not know that Saudi Arabia had Winter Olympic teams. I mean, I don't think it's a nation that has a lot of snow or winter type environment. But then again, obviously Jamaica had a bobsled team. I get it. But in watching all of that, I get into it and I appreciate it. Also because it is just like background noise and it's fun and you can put it on and whatever else. But I was very curious to see what Lindsey Vonn would be able to do. And I watched her, and for those that are unfamiliar, I can't imagine that anybody would be, but if you're not, Lindsey Vonn, a multiple-time Olympian who has obviously been linked and married to different athletes and men of fame as well, but that is not where she needs her fame. She has been a remarkable representation of the United States and athletics and everything for her career. So now, and I think a lot of people found inspiration in this, that I believe she's 41 years old, but she had a knee injury, 42. So she had a knee injury and was still, I qualified for the Olympics and I'm going to go out and I'm going to compete. And so like many, I was curious to see how she would do. And first off, what the sport that she is doing is, unbelievable. I can't imagine the speed of that and the risk of it, the adrenaline of it. I do believe this, Eddie, if there was one Olympic sport, I've asked this before, if you were given a year of training to learn one Winter Olympic sport, what is the one that no matter what, you would not be able to do it?
Skiing like that?
I think it's the high ski jump, right? Can you imagine? How long would it take before you had the cojones to go down that ramp?
Or the big air snowboard?
That too, yeah. Either one of the big air snowboard, like how do those guys not blow out their ankle every time, right?
Yeah.
But either way, So she goes out, and obviously, as everybody knows, unfortunately, I watched her training the other. I didn't like make an appointment viewing, but I happened to be watching when her training session was on, and I watched it. And I'm like, unbelievable. And she goes out, and she is, I don't know skiing, but my understanding is she takes rather aggressive lines. I know racing, and I know racing well enough to know that in the world of racing, if you are going around at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in order to make the lap as short as possible or to, cut time, so to speak. If you go down low, you can shave the corner a little bit. Well, if you get too low, you get out of the area of grip, and then things become dicey. And I think in snow skiing, I would imagine it's the same. There's a groove. There's a spot you go. If you get too far outside of that and you hit the wrong kind of snow or a more slick ice, you're in trouble. And she was riding that fine line.
She made contact with one of the flags.
I did see that. Her arm did, right?
Yeah, that's what people presume to be the reason.
The thing to me that I found most surprising, and I'm not even trying to be funny, I promise. I'm not making light of this. I was surprised by it. When she got injured, I mean, these people would know better than I. I was stunned.
Are you talking on the first time or the second time?
When she got seriously injured, the other day.
When she broke her leg?
Yes.
Okay.
And I get it. She's on the side of a mountain, and you have events that you have to maintain to keep going. But they put her in a sled. Am I the only one that was stunned that they airlifted her out with a helicopter? And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, she's like 2,500 feet above the surface, just flying through the air.
Well, how else are you going to get down the slope, though, Jake?
Okay. Excellent question. She's in a sled, right?
You going to sled her down with a broken leg?
Or back up. I was surprised that they don't have some sort of...
She was also airlifted when she ruptured her ACL.
But I was surprised that they don't have something in place. And I get it. You probably have to maintain the surface of the snow and whatever else. But that they don't have some means of... I mean, maybe it takes a 30-minute delay or whatever. But going down and basically tow roping it back up the hill. Or, for that matter... with supervision, sledding her down and then off of an area where then like an ATV or something is able to get to her. I mean, I get it, but I'm curious. I am genuinely curious. Am I the only one that was surprised by seeing the footage of her? Now, granted, they've got her in there and she's covered up, so it's not like she's looking out and seeing, oh, by the way, you're just strapped to the bottom of a sled that's now like swirling around 2,500 feet in the air on a helicopter. And I don't know, I mean, did they... I guess if you can't land the helicopter on the side of the mountain too. I mean, there are a lot of logistical challenges there. But it just seemed to me she wasn't that far into the run, was she? Wasn't it basically right at the beginning?
Pretty much, yeah.
So she couldn't have been that far from the very top. That's my point. That they didn't have a mechanism that somehow, like a machine that has a tow rope attached to it that you attach to the back of the sled and then just like pull it back up. Again, maybe with somebody there to guide it. I don't know. Did you find it surprising, Eddie, or am I alone on my own island here? My own snowy mountain?
I don't know. Like, I was thinking of it like logistically. I'm like, there's no way you can't. No vehicle is able to just drive up a mountain at that, that degree of incline.
No, I get that.
Or down. So, like,
Jake, rules say they have to airlift them out. Okay.
Yeah, like that's the only way I feel like is you're able to get somebody off a mountain like that.
Okay.
I don't think there's a way to really, either go down or go up the mountain.
By the way, did I see that the NFL is doing a game in Australia next year? Did I hallucinate that?
Did you see when the Super Bowl is next year?
No.
It's Valentine's Day.
Oh, boy.
And then the next day is President's Day.
President's Day's on the 15th?
Yep.
I thought it was always the week of the 20th. I could be wrong on that, the third Monday.
Well, we're a week away from President's Day. You realize that? No show next Monday?
Really?
Yep.
So I can't do my presidential fun facts?
No.
Oh, that's a bummer. People love kids love that in particular. Hey, Jake. The NFL definitely wants to go global. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about when I heard the game taking place in Australia. Maybe I hallucinated that. Jake, having been around downhill skiing for quite a while, I've seen many an injured person taken down by sled behind a ski-doo. Very rough ride and very challenging. I'm sure this is the best way to the hospital from a remote mountain location. Okay. It just visually speaking, I was like, whoa. Super Bowl reflections, and I'm talking about the game itself. We'll get into that with a guy that covers it as much as anybody in this market next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
What a tune. By the way, my mom, I need to apologize formally to my mom. Earlier when I was talking about family memories and whatever else, and I said, you know, and then you get to an age where when your parents are aging, my mom's like, I'm not aging. My mom is, in fact, Benjamin Button. So I totally misspoke there.
To answer your question, coming back with Man at Work because the international games in 2026, there are 9 of them.
Okay.
9.
Oh, can I guess where all they're playing?
Sure, why not?
Should we bring Chap into this to allow him to?
Well, here's the thing. I think
well?
Chap may know all the answers because Chap's on it.
Frankfurt?
No. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different cities.
Okay, Mexico City?
That is correct. That's one.
Berlin?
Berlin? No.
Okay, Paris?
Paris? Yes. That's 2.
London?
Yes, they have 3 of the games. So that's
So
3 of the 7 cities.
Okay. Sydney?
No.
Melbourne?
Yes.
Okay. Our Australian buddy Michael and Marcus will be thrilled with that.
I bet they will be.
Okay, so I'm missing how many?
3.
Are they in countries that I've been named already?
Yes. One of them is, yes.
Hit me.
Munich,
Okay.
Madrid, and Rio.
Madrid they did this year, did they not?
I can't remember if they did it this year or last year.
I'm telling you, that's what when people think, and I respect it, that the selection of the halftime show performer is a political statement. It's less that and more the NFL's ongoing attempt to globalize its brand. Now, who is playing in Melbourne?
I don't think they've announced who's playing in Melbourne just yet.
Mike Chappell joins us now, Java House Peel and Pour guest line from CBS 4 and WXAN Fox 59. Chap, do you know when they will announce? Is it possible the Colts could be in one of these games?
Sure, Munich. Maybe they sort of have a German slant to their overseas. We're looking here. Melbourne, it's the Rams and the 49ers.
Okay.
Rio, Dallas, of course. Dallas, of course. I mean, they do everything for a crappy franchise. Paris are the Saints. Speaking of a crappy franchise. And then that's since we're just talking among friends.
That's right. The gloves are off.
I think those are the only ones that have teams named to them right now.
Okay. Chap, I'll tell you what. I was in Munich in November. I couldn't believe how – I don't know what I was expecting, and I mean this is no disrespect to Germany, but I don't know what I was expecting, but Munich was awesome. Like, it was a super cool city. That would be – if the Colts go to Munich, man, people need to go. It was cool.
Yeah, the wife and I had hoped to go to Berlin. We had set it up with our son to go, first son, my stepson, and it just with my back hip stuff and all that didn't work out. But he went and had a great time. Great time. So yeah, hopefully that since I'm closer to the end than the beginning, if they go overseas again in the next year or two, I'd love to go. I think Madrid would be cool.
Yeah, Madrid would be very cool because I've been to Barcelona, but I think Madrid is more pure, just Spanish culture, if you will, right?
We went. That's one of the fortunate byproducts of covering the Colts so long. Is I've gone to their overseas games, except for the last couple in Germany. London was outstanding. Jim Irsay had a dinner at Kensington Palace. I mean, holy smokes! You talk about Beverly Hillbillies being, at a place in London, for crying out loud. But I went to Mexico City for a preseason game, which was an experience beyond all. I went to Tokyo for a preseason game, Michael Vick and Peyton Manning and all that. So really, and then I went to Toronto, big whoop. But it's really a great byproduct of sticking around a long time.
And by the way, of course, the Tokyo trip that's what led to one of the great quotes in the history of the NFL in Indianapolis with Edgerrin James. The closest I'll get to Tokyo is Benihana. Still a great quote.
Yes.
But, Chap, let's get to yesterday, the Super Bowl. First off, your overall impressions on the game itself, and if there was anything schematically or in terms of its execution that surprised you.
I guess it shouldn't have surprised me, but the Patriots had no ability to slow down the pass rush. And as we've seen over the years, forever, if you can't protect your quarterback, you're done. The last 2 times, if I'm not mistaken, when Patrick Mahomes has gotten beaten in the Super Bowl, he's just gotten pummeled. So whether that was on Drake May, whether that was on Josh McDaniels for not making any adjustments, or what I think the Patriots, was it the first time a team started two rookies on the left side of the line, or maybe on the line period, and those guys just couldn't do it. I expected Seattle to win. I had like 27-17. I just thought their defense was that good, and I didn't think the Patriots were that bad, but they sort of had, and I'm not going to take it. They made the Super Bowl, but they had, as has been noted, they played an easier schedule, and they sort of, benefited from things that happened along the way with Bo Nix being hurt and all that. So, yeah, but you're there, and you hate to, if you're a team, you hate to have it in like that. But I'm really curious how Drake May comes back from this, because it was just a bad performance. I think I saw that. It's funny. Did I see he threw for 235 yards in the fourth quarter, the most ever by a quarterback in a quarter?
And I don't know if it was that Seattle just went to a different formation, but Collinsworth made the point that you could see where for May he finally started to recognize some looks and was then able. I mean, I don't think anybody questions his arm strength, or and of course he was hurt going into it, but yeah, it did feel like that fourth quarter was completely different than the previous three.
Well, let's keep in mind, I'm watching that game and how ineffective the Patriots were in a way. We're comparing apples and oranges and all that stuff, but I remember not too long ago when Phillip Rivers came off his couch and damn near beat those guys in Seattle. Remember 18-16, and it was 16-15 with 47 seconds to play. Now it was the perfect game plan by Shane Steichen and Lou Anarumo and all that, but still, it showed it could be done. So yeah, but like I said, I'm curious how he comes back. There've been quarterbacks that have a hard time. Dan Marino, for crying out loud, was there once. So we'll see. I never totally bought into the Patriots being that team. Thought they were a good team, but I still always thought Denver or Buffalo would be the team that got there. But good for the Patriots, and now they can try to rebuild or re-tweak or whatever the hell you do when you lose the Super Bowl, because a lot of teams that lose the Super Bowl do not get back there the next year.
The Seattle, and I was curious of this, Chap, your thoughts. If you look at Seattle, and, as I mentioned earlier in the program, at the very least, at least the Colts could hang a banner saying Seattle won a Super Bowl with a quarterback that was selected with the pick we once owned. I mean, you get that, right? Because the Jets took him with the pick that the Colts traded to New York so they could move up to get Darnold. But You got to be happy for Darnold. But Darnold, there was nothing about Sam Darnold that overly blew you away over the course of this season. But the blueprint of what Seattle did, does that give Indianapolis some hope? Because you look at it and you go, okay, the Colts have what could be a dynamic wide receiver. They have a wide receiver that's a veteran that can catch you tough balls over the middle or in space if they're going to be able to bring Pittman back. They have a running back that they can use like Walker and to accentuate and really burst and tailor. Maybe the Colts rely on it almost too much. And then a quarterback in Daniel Jones that can be like Darnold, maybe even a better version of Darnold. The question then becomes, can they get the kind of pass rush heat that Seattle was able to do? And that's not to say they have not tried to do that, but is there some form of a blueprint where the Colts can be Seattle light?
Well, but that's who they are. That's who the Colts are. Everything that Seattle did now, the defense is light years from where the Colts were because of the pass rush and talent in a few spots. But this is exactly how the Colts want to play. And when they were 8-2, I'm doing a look ahead for our website, and I'm starting with quarterbacks for tomorrow. And everything they did when they were 8-2, that's what Seattle did all season. You got a quarterback who's making plays. He's not making mistakes. The offense, people forget very quickly that when they were 8-2, they had the best offense on the planet. First in scoring, first in yards per play, first in rushing yards per attempt. And the defense was okay, although they were still missing people. And remember when Jonathan Taylor and Daniel Jones were like in the MVP discussion, Jonathan Taylor was averaging like 113 yards a game. It was crazy. So it's not necessarily the blueprint that Seattle has. That's the blueprint the Colts have built on. They were built on this year. Now, like I said, the difference being the Colts pass rush simply wasn't good enough. It hasn't been good enough for too many years, and a pass rush. Who would you rather have? Would you rather have a strong pass rush or better corners? I'd take a pass rush. It covers up a lot of things. I remember talking to someone, maybe it was someone at the Colts, and remember when DeForest Buckner was out and then one of the corners were out. Which one would you rather have, like Mooney Ward or DeForest Buckner? I'd take DeForest Buckner every day.
Right.
Every day. So no, but your point's well taken. It's that is what the Colts, aspire to be. To that, and for a long time, for 10 games, that's who they were. And then when Jones gets hurt, it all came tumbling down, and they couldn't have that death spiral, which very few teams recover from losing not only your starting quarterback, but your backup with Anthony Richardson. They were down to 3 and 4 when they brought in Grandpa Phil. So yeah, that's what you want to do. And the more you watch Daniel Jones play, I always kind of compare him to Alex Smith, which is not criticism at all. Alex Smith was pretty doggone good when he got out of Frisco. So that's what you need. Would you like to have, Burrow and Allen and all those guys? Of course, Mahomes. Of course you would. There just aren't very many of those guys.
Right.
But you can win with again. I don't know where Sam Darnold ranks now. In the league, is he top 10?
He's
8, 9, 10, maybe. I don't know.
Doesn't it feel like he's kind of in that, like 12 to 15? Top 10, like 10 to 15, maybe, right?
But when the other pieces are in place, for crying out loud, that's enough.
But okay, Chap, let's do this. Quarterbacks, when healthy, that in the league that are definitively better than Sam Darnold. I'm going to name a quarterback. You just give me a yes or no. You ready?
Okay.
Mahomes.
Yes.
Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
Josh Allen.
Yes.
Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I want to say yes, but I'll say no.
Okay. Matt Stafford.
Yes.
Eddie, help me out. Bo Nix.
No.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that's 6. Yep.
Caleb Williams.
Not yet.
Jared Goff.
Yes. That's close. That's a close one.
Baker Mayfield.
No.
Okay.
Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence, good one. What's that?
Trevor Lawrence, that's another good. That's I would say no, because he always makes mistakes when you can't afford him. So all of a sudden we've got Darnold top 8.
Yeah. So you got him basically sitting in the neighborhood with Baker Mayfield and Trevor Lawrence as his neighbors, right?
Right. It's funny how the season changes things, because again, when mid-season, remember Baker Mayfield was the talk of the town too, and then they went to hell. So it's again, if you don't have Jamar Chase, if you don't have Justin Jefferson, if you don't have some of these top guys, but you've got a good group like the Colts have got, you can make it work, and not just make it work, but excel. So it's just you're just not fortunate to get the top 3 or 4 or 5 guys.
Let me give you 4 more quarterbacks here, Chap. You ready?
Okay.
Jordan Love.
Yeah.
You're saying Love's better?
Yes.
Okay. Brock Purdy.
I've never liked Brock Purdy.
Okay. Jaden Daniels.
Too small of a sample size.
Okay. Daniel Jones.
No, only because although if Jones finishes the season, they're probably very similar.
Right.
But that makes our point is you can be pretty good with that guy. Again, I remember one thing Chris Ballard told us in January. He says when you're always chasing quarterbacks, it sort of hampers everything you do. But until you get that quarterback right, your margin of error is so small. You know, and I go back to the extreme with Peyton Manning and the great eraser where, you know, no lead is safe and all that stuff. And we saw that with Luck. It was so cool to see him in Frisco during the Super Bowl week. I mean, I just kept thinking, man, this team would have won minimum two Super Bowls with Andrew Luck. They would have. But that guy allows you to do so much. I don't think Darnold lets you do that because I thought they determined very early in that game that it was going to be low scoring, and as long as Seattle didn't turn the ball over, they weren't going to lose. So they sort of had him playing that way. But, you know, maybe if the game had been 38-30, he had some great shootouts with the Rams, so he's capable. But it's so important for the quarterback to understand what the game is. Phillip Rivers against the Seahawks near the end of the season. You know, don't do anything stupid. Take care of the ball. And before you know it, it's 16-15 and you're in position to win. So, but no, it's again, Darnold, it was great to see. I think that I see he's the first quarterback to win a Super Bowl with his fifth team, being on his fifth team. That's why everybody has expectations of Daniel Jones. I'm not saying Super Bowl, but I'm saying being good enough to get you on the doorstep of doing something, whatever that something is. Because again, I go back to what I was most optimistic about with Jones until the injury was that he didn't do anything super off the charts. You know, I can't believe he did this. He was just playing his game, and he let the team around him do its job. That's when we saw that's when Tyler Warren was so effective, and then once Jones went out, Tyler Warren became just a guy. And talk about being just a guy. Once Jones went out, Jonathan Taylor turned into, you know, just a guy. I mean, he averaged. I mean, he averaged like half as much yards, like 3.3 a carry. And that's all related to the quarterback and what that didn't allow you to do. So no, but back to what you mentioned, that Seattle is what the Colts, the blueprint they had going into the season until Jones got hurt. So I think that's why I say there's a reason for optimism if Jones comes back from that Achilles, which by all accounts he will, I guess.
Chap, let me throw something at you. Mike Chappell's my guest, Java House Peel and Port guest line. He is with CBS 4 and WXA and Fox 59. I'm going to throw you something that I mentioned to Kevin and Bowen at the end of the week. And once you get done laughing at my absurdity, I want you to then chime in, okay?
Sure. I'm used to laughing at your absurdity.
I'm aware, yeah. So a year ago, Minnesota had on its roster J.J. McCarthy, young quarterback that they believe has a lot of promise, Sam Darnold, and Daniel Jones. Sam Darnold goes to Seattle, wins the Super Bowl. Daniel Jones goes to Indianapolis and gets off to a great start pre-injury. J.J. McCarthy struggles. Minnesota now, I'm not saying that he's the end-all, be-all decision maker, but they have influence within their front office from Ryan Grigson, who, I don't know this, but I would speculate, probably would get a wrinkle to his smile if he were to do something that makes life more difficult for Chris Ballard. Is there any chance we consider it a foregone conclusion that Daniel Jones will be the starting quarterback for the Colts next year? And I know he's coming off injury, which creates question. But he's familiar also with Minnesota's doctors and Minnesota's building and Minnesota's scheme. Is there any chance that Minnesota's the one franchise that says, you know what? Everybody thinks it's a foregone conclusion. We think our young kid might be able to gain by learning for another year. Let's go out and get Daniel Jones because we saw what you're able to do with Sam Darnold in Seattle. Daniel Jones can be that guy for us here in Minnesota.
I'm not laughing. It's just not going to happen because the Colts will never let Jones get to the market.
Do you believe that they would franchise tag him at $42 million?
Yeah. I don't think it'll get to that, but yes.
Okay.
And it's the same thing with Alec Pierce. They're not going to let him sniff the open market. Maybe more. No, I'll just say more so with Pierce, but no, they'll get both those done because there's really no plan B to not get it done.
Which makes me wonder if that doesn't more incentivize getting him. And I know that sounds crazy.
Well, but again, I understand that teams tamper. They do, and there could be some kind of contact somewhere with the Vikings, with Jones and agents and all this stuff. But the Colts are going to get something done with Jones. The only question is what it's going to be. One website looks at a $43 million a year contract, and one guy has it's like the Sam Darnold number, 3 years, $100 million. All that's going to matter, as I mentioned in the story, is the guaranteed money. And to me, the guaranteed money starts with what the franchise tag is. Was it 40? Is it $47 million? I've got it written down somewhere. So whatever the franchise number is, in my mind, if I'm a player, that's my guarantee. That's where we start talking guaranteed money. The rest of the money is just it's just window dressing. It doesn't mean anything because they can walk away from it. But I don't see any way that Jones has a chance to talk with another team, and I see no chance that Pierce has a chance to talk to another team. Can you imagine Alec Pierce on the open market, and Buffalo says, "Yeah, we'll give you $30 million."
Yeah.
Or more, Kansas City. So that's and when the general manager comes out in January and says, "Yeah, these are priorities." Well, that's GM speak by for we're going to get it done. And again, I think the fact that Jones fit well here, and the Colts gave him a chance, and it worked. I tell you, how about instead of Jones going to Minnesota, Anthony Richardson goes to Minnesota? How about that?
I mean, yeah. That's
because I don't see any way that AR's back here next year, which would almost this
Do
year.
you think the Colts are comfortable going with Riley Leonard to start the year if Jones is not available?
Yes, but they could, they can always sign another veteran if they want, and there'll be that guy out there, the Mariotas, and
Josh McCown becomes available, and
not a Mac Jones. If they would make a trade for a Mac Jones, that would tell me that Daniel Jones's Achilles isn't progressing the way they want it to. But there'll be a third quarterback here. I don't think it'll be Richardson. I just don't think. You talk about Jones being a fit. AR is not a fit in what Steichen wants to do. Again, the Colts have got 12 or 13 free agents. Many of them won't be back here, but I will be beyond shocked if Jones and Pierce get the chance to sniff free agency.
Do you believe Richardson, let's say he goes to Minnesota, does he become a player, Chap? Sometimes you mentioned Alex Smith. I think Alex Smith was a really darn good NFL quarterback. And unfortunately, people get judged based on how and where they were acquired. And because he was a number one overall pick, people go, he was a disappointment. Well, not really. He was really a good quarterback for Kansas City and Washington.
Right.
Can Richardson be that guy?
In a yes or no world, I'd say no. I just haven't seen the level of commitment that you need at that position. Maybe that's unfair. I don't know, but there is, and again, I'm so numb to the position from the way Peyton approached it, from the way Andrew Luck approached it, and all the really, really good quarterbacks. It's 24/7, and that's what we heard about Jones too. And I just people can change. I'm not sure a high level athlete like that changes that much their approach. I remember when Reggie Miller left the Pacers, and then wasn't Tremaine O'Neal supposed to be the leader
Correct.
of the team? And man, you just can't make people leaders. You can't put them in position to lead. Say that, go lead. You're our main player. I hope it works out for him because he's a good kid. He's a good young man. I just don't think the light goes on. I just don't. I hope it does. I don't think it does.
Mike Chappell, CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59. Chap, last thing before we let you go, I did want to touch on this. I apologize. I can't recall if we had you right after. I don't think we had you Friday, and I know you might have talked with John about this, but Reggie Wayne not getting into the Hall of Fame is one thing, Now it becomes more difficult because of those that will also be in the pool for next year. But most importantly, you said he was not in the final 5. Is that correct? Or 10?
He didn't make the cut from 15 to 10.
Is there, and my apologies for forgetting this, is there a minimum or maximum number that you can put in once they get down to the final 10?
Well, we go from 15 to 10 and from 10 to 7, and then we vote on 5. And the you need 80% to get in.
So it's not who, okay, this is where I got confused.
It gets convoluted in the weeds. The top 3 vote getters of modern era get in. So three of those 5 or 3 of those 7 will get in.
Regardless, even if the highest one has 48%.
It could be 75%.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then for a 4th guy to get in like we did this year, he needs 80%. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's I feel Reggie's frustration. We talk all the time, and he and Torrey Holt are in the same boat. Just Hall of Fame worthy numbers that, for some reason, nationally, people just don't appreciate what Reggie was.
You worried whether or not? I don't mean you. I mean we in general. We worried that there was going to be a player that was eventually going to be, going to be demerited because of the perception that Peyton Manning lifted them. And that's absurd to think that of Reggie Wayne because of how he reinvented himself and extended by playing almost a different kind of receiver for Andrew Luck and being very, very, very good and having, an unbelievable season that first year with Luck and et cetera. But I for whatever reason, it feels like Reggie Wayne is the one that the football gods selected to be held back by that aspect, which is unfair.
No question. It's unfair. Michael Irvin had Troy Aikman, and Andre Reed had Jim Kelly, and Jerry Rice had a couple pretty good quarterbacks as well.
Is John Taylor in?
No.
Okay.
No. So you could, Swan and Stallworth are, and that's a different story altogether because together I don't think they've got Reggie's numbers. But yeah, and then too, it's well, they've got so many guys from the 2000s from that team in the Hall of Fame with Dungy and Polian and Peyton and Edgerton and Marvin and Freeney, and man, you only guys won 1 Super Bowl. Well, that's not Reggie's fault,
right?
So yeah, I'm afraid there's some of that, but again, I understand, and I've seen Reggie's frustration to where he's just about telling the Hall of Fame to go fly a kite, and I urge him not to do that because at least when you're still among the final 15, you're still in the conversation, and once you're not in the conversation, people move on very quickly. So I hope it took John Lynch, the safety. It took him his 9th year as a finalist to get in. Edgerton got in after 6 years, I think it was. So, people have waited longer, but it's just frustrating when I see people get in that I don't agree with. And that's why we have 50 guys, and people can bitch and moan about the process all they want until they come up with a better way of doing it. And Deion Sanders said only Hall of Fame players should vote for this. He's so stupid. That is just crazy. He's the one that was bitching that too many people were getting in, and they should have different colors of gold. His should be the brightest gold. Give me a break. So no, I know. He wears me out, but I worry about Reg. I just know that he's a Hall of Fame receiver. I know he is. I go back to when we put in Andre Johnson ahead of him. That's wrong. It's still wrong. And that really hurt Reggie and Torrey Holt. I always bring up Torrey Holt because he's in that group as well.
Great player. Great player. And he did. I know. Torrey Holt's the same way, Chap, and the fact that he had Kurt Warner, and then if you really look at it, you could say that. But look, he was as good a receiver, if not better, with Mark Bolger throwing in the ball. So
that's and Reggie had one of his best seasons when he was 34.
Right.
With Andrew Luck, he had 100 and some catches and 1,345 yards, and he's the only player in league history that to have those numbers like 100 catches and 1,350 yards at age 34. So he didn't tail off until at the end when injuries, started pecking away at him. But he needs to get in, and the way that we're doing things now makes it hard, unless you're Drew Brees and Larry Fitzgerald, and coming up we're going to have other top guys.
Yeah, there are others around the corner, and that's what's going to make it interesting. But we shall see. Maybe he goes the Roger Craig route, but we'll see. Chap, appreciate the time as always, and we will continue to look at quarterbacks and try to figure out where Sam Darnold is. But I think 8 to 12 is 10 to 15, something like that, in that sliding range. Chap, appreciate the time as always.
Stay well, bye.
All right, Mike Chappell joining us, CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59. All right, back into it from a round ball standpoint and what is on docket for tomorrow in terms of that discussion. We'll tell you about that next. Hey there, it's Jake Corey for Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141 is the telephone number for Love Heating and Air, which has been around for over 100 years in Central Indiana. And the very best when it comes to customer service. Had a buddy of mine that just had him out and said, man, the tech that came out was outstanding in terms of his knowledge and also a friendly guy. And I said, that's what you get from Love Heating and Air. When you're inviting people into your own home, and as an official Heil Heating and Cooling dealer, you might have them out. You want somebody that you know is trustworthy and not going to steer you in the wrong direction. That's all the things you get from Love Heating and Air. I've known them my whole life. If you listen to this show, I want to make sure that you know that we are sending you to people that are going to treat you like family, and that's what you get from Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Indiana winners over Wisconsin over the weekend. Purdue with one that probably was more tight than it should be against Oregon. Something's going on with Purdue. And tomorrow we're going to talk with Andy Kendi from a buddy of mine who works television over in Omaha and covers Nebraska very closely.
Wait,
and
where?
What's that?
Where?
Omaha.
There you go.
Is that better?
That's better.
Thank you. Andy will join us to preview Nebraska and Purdue. And Nebraska, what Fred Hoiberg's done is obviously impressive. And Purdue has all the talent and experience in the world, but something's going on with them, whether it be defensively, whether it be chemistry. There's a lot of talk about that. I saw Rafael Davis said they have no leadership. Is that Matt Painter? Is that the veterans? Is it just as we talked about last week, somebody mentioned to me, hey, Jake, it's tough. You play with guys for a long time together, it becomes tough because teams figure out how to guard you. There's plenty of tape on Purdue. No doubt about that. Pacers will get the latest, should know by tomorrow, the extent of the injury to Johnny Furphy, which, again, I totally understand why there are people that are like, dude, he's the 12th guy. Well, this year has been about development. Development for Ben Mathurin, development for Jarris Walker, development for Johnny Furphy, development for that matter, Cam Jones, Talon Peter. Mathurin, obviously, you see now out of the mix. Now it becomes about the acclimation for Zubats and then seeing where you are on the wings. This will mean even more time for Jarris Walker, which is good because I think he started to figure it out a little bit. And Furphy was just starting to get introduction on some of the things he could be as a player. So it would be great to have him for the rest of the year to continue that time, but we'll see what his availability will be. Now, Eddie, the NBA today.
Yes.
The big report out there today is that Adam Silver and the NBA are prepared to announce expansion, right?
I haven't seen this.
For 2 cities. 2 cities.
Okay.
Those 2, would you like to guess without looking what 2 cities it would be?
Has one of these cities had a team before?
Yes.
Did they just win the Super Bowl, this
Yes.
city? Okay, so Seattle
Yes.
and Nashville.
No.
Vegas.
Yes.
Okay, I was trying to go off the beaten path because
And Nashville goes back to, Nashville now would be the next, I would think, in the hopper. They already have an arena. It's right down, it's a cool city. It's a growing area. And if there's not expansion and rather relocation, I would think New Orleans and Charlotte would be the 2 that are most, in Memphis. I could see Memphis going to Nashville. That would actually make some sense.
would they have to realign then? Because if you're adding a team in Vegas and Seattle, presumably those would be 2 Western Conference teams, right? So do you move a team over to the Eastern Conference?
Is it split right now, 50-50?
Yeah.
Is it 16 and 16?
15 and 15.
Are the 30 or 32 teams?
30.
Okay, so 15 and 15.
So would Memphis move over to the Eastern Conference, you would expect?
Or New Orleans.
Or both. Well, if you're adding 2 to
both,
the West,
correct.
you would have to add 2 teams
That's right.
to the Eastern.
That probably makes more sense, is that Memphis or Minnesota.
Minnesota, Oklahoma City.
Yeah, any of those could come.
Denver,
to the east.
maybe? I don't know.
But I had worried for a long time about Indiana being a potential relocation, only because, and I think now that was minimized greatly by the Simon family selling a percentage of their ownership stake to someone who then has right of purchase if need be, if the family decides to sell upon an inheritance. So that probably is now not but I rest assured that was something that I guarantee you people with much more clout than I have had that discussion. Matter of fact, I can promise you that. But that I'm always happy when I saw Vegas and Seattle, and I do think that Indiana, like the franchises that would be most in jeopardy of moving would probably be, in no particular order, Charlotte, Memphis, New Orleans, those three. I would think New Orleans in particular because their population base, unfortunately, has dwindled such, and their Fortune 500 companies and et cetera.
I do have a question to go back to your Purdue point and how Raphael Davis is saying they lack leadership.
Correct.
I kind of go back to that IU game at Assembly Hall, and we were talking, that Monday after the game. It was a Monday, right? Or was it a Wednesday? I can't remember. And we were just like that. Something looked off, and all the players were like, deferring to Braden Smith to kind of bail him out. I'm not saying he is, but could Braden Smith actually be the reasoning behind some of the play this year?
Yes.
Like if he's being a a-hole, as Pat Knight would put it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
because obviously we're not there enough to know, but
right.
I've seen some suggestions on Twitter that, Braden Smith could be the issue because it's the one player that we haven't really considered in all this.
No, I think here's the bottom line. If you have a team that has chemistry problems or that is simply underachieving or not running on all cylinders, typically the three people that you would look towards in no particular order would be the head coach, the point guard, and a veteran leader. Well, Braden Smith is two of those three. So just by numbers alone, you would think that would make him a potential culprit. Culprit's probably the wrong word, and I don't think that it's, to use Pat Knight's term, I don't know that it's to that extreme, but just is there, it may well be also, Eddie, that Braden Smith gets players involved and other guys are not happy with where he prioritizes sending the basketball. I mean, there's any number of different things that you can look towards. I did see John in the building earlier. We'll do the crossover. We'll do it brought to you by the good folks at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141, an official Heil Heating and Cooling dealer. And we'll see what John has lined up. We'll do it next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Eddie, I don't know that we ever, to use a radio term, paid off the tees, so to speak. Did we give the correct answer for the trivia question?
We
earlier?
never gave the correct answer, no.
What's that?
We never shared what the correct answer was.
The last running back Super Bowl most valuable player. It happened 28 years ago, correct?
Yes.
And that was?
Terrell Davis of the Denver Broncos.
Fabulous player. Short
Even
window
though
of time,
Dominic
but man,
Rhodes
he
should
was
have
great.
won it for the Colts.
What's that?
Even though Dominic Rhodes should have been the MVP.
Everyone knows that, yes. Yeah. John has walked in. J&B has arrived. You got, last night I saw, if I'm not mistaken, you were fighting with Twitter bots, right?
Was I fighting? I didn't even view it as fighting. I
Fighting's the
was
wrong
trying
word.
to set a pace of, can we just, it's music, dumbasses. It's
Right.
okay.
It
doesn't matter. If you like Kid Rock, great. If you like Lee Bryce or Travis Trice or whoever else is with him, Brantley Gilbert, that's great. If you like Bad Bunny, that's great.
Right.
It's not a big deal. I have to just make people aware that you don't have to be led down the path of miserableness by jackasses.
Well, have you noticed, though, that, like, anymore on, I don't know if it happens to you, but on the X-Post Twitter, like, certain things that I will send out, and then one bot latches on, and then it's just, there's no getting out. I mean, it's like a dumpster fire. It's crazy. I don't know if this happens to you or not. Like, I just get it. I had yesterday somebody that was coming after me, and I looked at it, and they've sent 4 tweets in their life. They started an account 5 years ago. Claudia S01658 or whatever.
Oh, she's hot.
Those 4 tweets were to me. I'm like, okay.
I love
clearly a bot.
the inspiration of being miserable that a lot of these people, and they're people we know that take the bait, is astounding to me. Why do you want to live like that?
I'm with you.
How do you want to wake up and go, hey, hold on a second, I got to be pissed off by something here.
Right.
Hold on. Oh, well, here, it's the music. This music, and it's funny, somebody had mentioned to me, Jake, the true story. Somebody had said, hey, are you going to do your show in Spanish tomorrow? Because that's where we're going. And I said, let me tell you this. I'm not smart enough to do it. I mean, I know like 3 words. I said, secondly, I didn't mind that in Spanish, just like I was watching Seinfeld in the Hamptons, and it was the famous shrinkage episode.
Right.
I'm not likely to have shrinkage anytime soon either. I thought, no, just because I'm watching something on TV doesn't mean that it's going to translate to what I do every day. It's a form of entertainment at that moment, and then I move on.
Look, I've had relatability to the vast majority of things, culturally speaking, over the last 50 years. Every once in a while, I enjoy stepping outside of that a little bit. But what's on the big program today?
Josh Schertz is the head coach of St. Louis, the one-loss team.
23-1?
23-1, the Billikens of St. Louis. And, it took me a year to get over my butt-hurtedness that he left Indiana State. I do understand why, but we'll talk with him. I think Stephen Holder, maybe. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to James yet. But we'll do that. Super Bowl recap. IU tonight. Weird Monday night affair with Oregon. Who's going to be more out of sorts at the beginning? IU because they played on Saturday, or Oregon because they played on Saturday?
Oregon because they were also at Upstairs Pub, apparently.
Yeah, I was yesterday, too. I went to Buffalo's yesterday.
That's right.
That's what we do. We go down there and get some Buffalo's wings and then come back home. Hit
Sounds
that place
good,
up
man.
yesterday because
Sounds
IU
good.
and Purdue played women's basketball down there yesterday.
By the way, the 76 team will be honored tonight. I believe right now, as it stands, are there, Eddie, 2 unbeatens left? Just
Yes,
Arizona and Miami.
You can listen to them tonight as they take on Darren Peterson and the Kansas Jayhawks on the Fan at 8:45. And then Miami of Ohio. Their head coach will be joining the morning show on Wednesday, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yes.
All right. That's cool.
Yep.
Two unbeatens left.
Who's your favorite 76 team member?
Bobby Wilkerson.
I'm right there with you. I like Scott May.
May's hard to argue. I just like Wilkerson because he was a do what needs to be done guy and a defensive stopper. And
when I was 6 years old, my grandpa took me and 3 of my friends to the Memorial Union to get our basketball signed by them. And I still have this somewhere. My grandpa had a big white Barney Miller clip-on tie, and he didn't have a ball, and he wanted stuff signed, so he took off this big white, wide 70s clip-on tie and handed it to Quinn. And I've told Quinn this story before. Quinn said, I'm sorry, so we're not allowed to sign clothing. And he goes, I don't care. And he just kind of clipped clipped it off of his shirt, handed it to him, and they all signed a clip-on
That's
tie.
cool.
It's still around somewhere too. I still have it someplace.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a good time. Those were good moments in history right there for real.
Josh Schertz among those that will be joining John next, and we will be back to you tomorrow. We'll preview Purdue and Nebraska. Andy Kendi is my buddy from Omaha. I mentioned he will be on with us tomorrow. Also, Scott Agnes will find out the latest on Johnny Furphy. We'll get all of that tomorrow. Thanks to Mike Chappell for joining us on the program today. Thanks as well to Eddie Gill, and thanks to you for listening. I appreciate it, as always, that you've listened to Query & Company.